Hello everyone, we are from group 3 and now we are going to presentation about our material about learning grammar. Okay, this is our member of group. There are Apriani, Priska, Della, Febrianti, Maulidi, Aysyah, Nanda, Gita Rininta, Stefani Siduppa, and then Berliana Rizky.
A place for grammar. It will be said that grammar has no place in the young learners class because it is too difficult for children or irrelevant to their learning. In this presentation, I would like to open up grammar idea and explore grammar from the learner's perspective. With this, I have to share a little knowledge that grammar does have a place and foreign language learning for children and that skill grammar teaching can be beneficial. Grammar remind us that it is something more than just a list of labels and rules found in grammar book and interconnect with vocabulary. We will then look at how to help learning develop adaptable grammar from young learners. Okay, here we try with a short conversation with young learners to help focus on grammar and meaning. The following example of a conversation took place between a 7-year-old boy and a teacher. So this is an example. The teacher say, "What's that?" with a showing the T-Rex image. And the children will answer, "That's T-Rex." The teacher say, "It is big or small?" And the children will answer, "Big." And the teacher say, "How big?" We can compare the size of dinosaurs with what is around us, a measure of the size of dinosaurs, and do this repeatedly. And we can do this repeatedly. If they feel that the size ratio matches the size of the dinosaurs, they will say yes. And the teachers can say, "Yes, it was very big." Not only had we reached agreement on the size of T-Rex, but I had modeled from the children a new piece of grammar, which his sons to need to express what he already knew about the dinosaurs, that it was very big. Moreover, the little boy had understood the meaning of the new piece of English grammar. The topic of our talk was clear from the picture, and the idea of size was clear from the gesture and his knowledge of big. Without the grammatical texture, it was very big and language resources. The children will not tell me all he knew about his dinosaurs. With the adjective big, he could begin to express his knowledge, but I need more to express meaning precisely. By beginning the process of introducing the new grammatical form, the teacher was helping him expand his language courses and his communicative possibilities. The short conversation about T-Rex has illustrated several starting points for thinking about grammar and young learner. 1. Grammar is necessary to express precise meanings in discourse. 2. Grammar ties closely into vocabulary and learning and using the foreign language. 3. Grammar learning can evolve from the learning of chunk of language. 4. Talking about something meaningful with the child can be useful while they introduce new grammar. And 5. Grammar can be taught without technical label. Okay, the next section, discussion of 3 different meanings of the word grammar, help to clarify what is happening when children learn on grammar learning.
Different meanings of grammar. The word grammar has been used so far to refer to an aspect of how a language, in this case English, is conventionally used, i.e., to the structure or system of a particular language. But it is a slippery word and is also used to refer to the way that system is described by linguists. As in Chomsky's grammar, systemic functional grammar, and to the internal mental representation of the language that an individual has built up. As in the learner grammar, before proceeding, and I should like to briefly clarify these different meanings of grammar. The first, the grammar of a language. Think for a moment about the foreign language in use as a first language. For example, French being spoken in French-speaking homes, schools, shops, factories, television in Canada in French in Togo. Every time native speakers of French use the language, they recreate it to express their ideas or needs to other people, and each time French is used, it changes a little for the people using it. A language does not really exist as an object or entity. Separate from people, we tend to think of it that way, but we may also think of it as a collection of all its uses. Such as a language is constantly changing, i.e., it is dynamic. Larson, Freeman, 1997. To teach a language to non-native speakers, we need to stop it, to fix it so that we can understand it as a more static set of ways of talking, and break it into bits to learners. Breaking a language into word-sized bits produces vocabulary. Finding patterns in how words are put together produce grammar. So English has the patterns, i.e., a regularity across many or most native speakers, that expresses the idea of intensification by placing very in front of adjectives. These patterns are often called rules, but we should notice that patterns are rules insofar as they describe what people usually do, rather than being like school rules or rules of football that teachers or referees ensure are obeyed. Second, theoretical and pedagogic grammars. Chomsky's linguists aim to describe languages as it is internalized in the mind or brain, rather than as it is produced by speakers. Their main goal is to explore and unify on a theoretical level similarities in syntax across all languages, and this work has little, if any, application to the language classroom. At one stage in this research program, the idea of a generative grammar was developed. Halidayan linguists, on the other hand, view language as a tool for expressing meaning, and so they categorize language in terms of how meaning is expressed and produce functional grammar. New ways of analyzing these large datasets are producing new theoretical concepts of language. For example, examining the way certain meanings are expressed can produce local grammars of topics such as definition and evaluation, which are part of a more global grammar of the language. Hunstone and Francis, 1998. These various descriptive grammars aim to be theoretically sound, elegant, and complete. They are not primarily designed for the foreign language classroom, and if they are to be used to inform foreign language teaching, need to be adapted with learning and teaching in mind. Such adapted and adjusted grammars are known as pedagogical grammars, and familiar examples might be Wirt and Greenbaum, 1975, or the Cobalt grammar, Sinclair, 1990. Pedagogical grammars are explicit descriptions of patterns or rules in a language presented in ways that are helpful to teachers and to learners. Teachers need an overview and description of the whole of the language that is to be taught. But learners will encounter the pedagogical grammar bit by bit as part of it are introduced in textbooks units. While older learners may use a learner's pedagogical grammar, such as English grammar in use Murphy 19 and 94, which sets out and explains a description of the language on paper. It is doubtful that learners younger than about 10 years of age could benefit from formal pedagogic grammars because of their cognitive demands. Third, internal grammars. Learners will meet pedagogical grammar, if not directly from a learner's grammar book, then indirectly through lessons, teacher explanations, and textbooks. A further key distinction needs to be made between this grammar and what any individual learner actually learns about the patterns of the language. His or her internal grammar of the language. Every learner internal grammar is different from every others because each has a unique learning experience. Internal grammar is sometimes referred to as interlanguage or as linguistic competence. I want to emphasize the distinction between external theoretical or pedagogic grammars and internal grammars because it helps us understand why a learner may have been taught a piece of grammar on the syllabus, but may not be able to use that grammatical form in talking or writing. It is essentially yet another way of pointing out the difference between teaching and learning, so that learning can be made central to teaching.
Development of the internal grammar. Young learners have a long time ahead of them with the language. There is no need to rush into technical rules and labels that will confuse. It seems likely to be far better to give children a sound basis in using the language while encouraging curiosity and talk about patterns and contrasts in and between language and introducing grammatical language slowly and meaningfully. From word to grammar. Learner chunks of language will make up a substantial part of early learning, and that learned chunks also provide a valuable research for developing grammar as they are broken down and reconstituted. Ways of teaching that help learners notice word inside chunks and how other words can be used in the same place may help with the development of grammar. Development of the internal grammar, learning through hypothesis testing. Children build hypotheses about how the foreign language works from the data they have received from their limited experience with the language. Errors in language use can often act as a window onto the developing internal grammar of the learner and are signal of growth. Principle for learning-centered grammar teaching. Importance of attention in the learning process. Teaching can help learners notice and attend to features of grammar in the language they hear and read or speak and write. Noticing an aspect of from is the first stage of learning. It then needs to become part of the learner's internal grammar. And to become part of the learner language, researchers ready for use in a range of situations. Influence of the first language. When data is limited, learners are more likely to use their first language to fill the gaps. So, the learners may assume that foreign language grammar works like first language grammar. If the foreign languages are not particularly obvious, the probability of them being noticed and used is even smaller. It is precisely
These cross-linguistically different and low-profile features of grammar and that need from focused instruction.
A learning-centered approach to teaching grammar. The first is trends in teaching grammar. The second is teaching grammar as explicit rules, learning as building blocks. The third is communicative approaches, no grammar needed. And then the last one is a focus on form, the arrival of grammar teaching. Trends in teaching grammar. The grammar teaching in recent years has been as susceptible as other aspects of FLT to trends, the most significant of which are, for our purposes, has probably been the swing away from grammar translation method through communicative method and on to current ideas about focusing on form. Each of these perspective on language teaching takes a different view of learning process, and we can clarify that is important about it by examining practice through the lens of research on learning. The building block sequence also does not fit very comfortably when younger children's tendency for the thematic or narrative. We need a more organic metaphor for the growth of internal grammar that does not see it as the piling up of discrete blocks of knowledge, but that captures an idea of non-linear and interconnected growth. Grammar growth like a plant, perhaps watered by meaningful English use, and pushing out the new shoots while older stems are strictly knit. The third is communicative approaches, no grammar needed, a form of CLT that is based entirely on learning to comprehensible input is total physical response or TPR, and variation on TPR are found in many young learners course books. In this method, as developed by Aysyah, 1972, students listen to commands and forage language and respond only through movement and action. Getting up and sitting down, turning around, putting things on the shelves. Along with other no grammar approaches, however, there seems to be limits to what can be achieved without some attention to output and to grammar. The last one is focus on form, the arrival of grammar teaching. Children do pick up the foreign language really quickly and develop very good accents and listening skills. They can achieve good results through the second language. But in terms of grammar, children talk through the second language do not develop the same levels of accuracy as native speakers, and without this attention to the form of language problem which basic structures continue in subject classroom, where communicating meaning in the central aim, learners seems to bypass aspects of grammar, but in listening where more attention is paid to the subject content than to the language that carried it in the speaking, where teachers be able to understand what pupils want to say. Principle for learning centered grammar teaching. as children get older, so they are increasingly be able to learn from more formal interaction, but we should remember that grammar teaching can often destroy motivation and puzzles children rather than enlighten them. Good learning-centered grammar teaching will be meaningful and interesting, require active participation from learners, and will work with how children learn and what they are capable of learning. As with a foreign language lesson, will strongly influence what actually happens in classroom, but some general principles for learning-centered grammar teaching can be summarized. The first is the need for grammar. The need for grammar. Grammatical accuracy and precision matter of meaning. Without attention for the form will not be learned accurately. Form-focused interaction is particularly relevant to for those features of the foreign language grammar that are different from the first language or are not very noticeable. The second is potential conflict between meaning and grammar. If learners' attention is direct to expressing meaning, they may neglect attention to accuracy and precision. And then, importance of attention in the learning process. Teaching can help learners notice and attend to features of grammar in language they hear and read or speak and write. Noticing an aspect of form is the first stage of learning it. It then needs to be part of the learner's internal grammar and to become part of the learner's language resource ready to use in a range of situations. And then learning grammar as the development of internal grammar. The learner has to do the learning, just teaching grammar does not make it happen. Grammar learning can work outwards from participation in this discourse, from vocabulary, and from learner chunks. Learners' errors can give teachers useful information about their learning process and their internal grammar. And then the last one, the role of explicit teaching of grammar rules. Teaching grammar explicitly requires the learners to think about language in very abstract, formal ways that some enjoy and some find difficult. The younger the learner, the less appropriate it is likely to be. Children can master meta language if it is well taught. Meta language can be useful tool.
The fourth technique for supporting grammar learning is proceduralizing activities. At this point, we want learners to automatically their use of grammatical form so that it is available quickly and effectively for use in communication. Text design must ensure that grammar is essential for achieving text goals, and the same attention to accuracy is required. But the idea is that attention to accuracy can gradually be relaxed and as it becomes automatic. So the activity or the example for working from this course grammar, first one is the language of classroom management. When children begin learning English, some very simple phrases for classroom management can be introduced, and as time goes by, this can be expanded. Some of the phrases originally used by the teacher and can be used by students when they work in pairs or groups. The language of classroom management can thus act as a meaningful discourse context within which certainly pattern arise regular and help with building the internal grammar of students. And for the next activity is talking with children. So conversation with individual children can be very powerful for language development because we can pick up on exactly what an individual children need to know and want to talk about. That is about what their interest of, so we can add more grammar in our conversation with the children. Second technique for supporting grammar learning is guided noticing activities. So in these activities, we more focus to make students notice the grammar from our activity. So the first activity is listen and notice. In this activity, students listen to sentences or to connected piece of talk. For the example, from story or phone call, and complete a table or grid using what they hear. In the order to complete the grid, and they need to pay attention to the grammar aspect that being taught. From Halliwell, 1992, suggests using a grid to practice preposition. It's important that the top line includes at least two instances of each object with a different location, so that students have to listen to the preposition in the sentence to know which box to tick. Second activities that we can use is presentation of new language with puppets in language syllabus that require teacher to present new language regularly to children. The idea of learner noticing can be helpfully introduced into more traditional ways of teaching grammar. When introducing a new pattern, the teacher can construct a dialogue with storyline that uses a repetition plus contrast patterns to be played out by puppets. So we can use puppets to make our students more interest and focus to our material so they can easier get new language. The third activity for supporting grammar learning is language practice activities that offer structuring opportunities. In these structuring activities, the goal is to help learners internalize the grammatical patterns so that it becomes part of their internal grammar. The focus is on internal work that happens as a result of activities that demand accuracy rather than fluency in production. Various types of classroom tasks can be used with grammar structuring goals, and some manipulation and pre-planning by the teacher may be needed to ensure that the activities include planful practice and particular form. The example of the activities, first one is questionnaires, surveys, and quizzes. So for this activity, teacher can ask students to interview their friends to find out their favorite food or drink and also maybe music. For this activity, the teachers need to plan which language forms that students will be encouraged to use. Preparation of the question is necessary to ensure accuracy, and the activity must be managed so that the questions are asked in full each time. The next activity is information gap activity. Information gap activity is an activity where learners are missing the information that they need to complete a task, and they need to talk to their friends to find the answer. Helping hands. So for this activity, the student can have more interaction with their friends, and also it can practice their motoring skill. So this game for students around 5 or 6 years. So this activity, children had drawn their hands and cut out the hand shape. So on each finger, they wrote on sentence describing something they do to help at home. So each child sentence could be different. The paper cut out were then displayed on the wall, making a kit of plum tree out of the hand shape. It looked very effective, but was also interesting for the children to read. So uh, they see what their friends did at home. Next is drills and chants. So drill have been used in language classroom for decades and are a useful way of giving all children some speaking practice when the class is too large for individual speaking. So they also offer language and employment support to children when used to practice new language, because the child can listen to others to pick up bit that she or he is unsure about. And drills can be lively and fun if the pace is kept out. The dangers of overusing drills occur mostly if the children do not understand the content, and drills are then a mechanical experience in making noise. So rather than language learning opportunities, I shall take it for granted here that the meaning of the language being drills is supported and made clear to children in appropriate ways. The fourth technique for supporting grammar learning is proceduralizing activities. At this point, we want learners to automatically their use of grammatical form so that it is available quickly and effectively for use in communication. Text design must ensure that grammar is essential for achieving text goals, and the same attention to accuracy is required. But the idea is that attention to accuracy can gradually be relaxed and as it becomes automatic. So for the example of the activity, first one is polar animal description revisited. In this activity, the teacher described about polar animal. So after that, teacher asks the student to choose their own animal to be described, and the student prepare the description from the animal, like simple description from the teacher. So next one is dictogloss. So the basic idea of dictogloss is that the teacher reads out a text several times and the student listen and make note between readings and reconstruct the text in pairs or small groups, aiming to be as close as possible to the original, as accurate as possible. During the collaborative reconstruction, learners will talk to each other about the language as well as the content and drawing on making their internal grammatical knowledge. Through this talk, a student may learn from another about some aspect of grammar. The last technique for supporting grammar learning is introduction meta-language. So for the activity, first one is explicit teacher talk. So here is a teacher doing some meta-linguistic work with 12 years old. So in the activity, student on plural forms in English notice how he used the repetition, contents, patterns, and how the student formulates the rules at the end. However, since this, the student seems to have the concept of plural and singular, so the technical terms might be usefully introduced to them. This will also depend on whether they have learned meta-language term in their first language lesson. The other activities is closed activities for word class. This kind of activities focus attention on word classes and how they contribute to discourse, without going into any heavy grammar, and it is more challenging with a less predictable content. So in these activities, teacher can give student the lyric of a song with gaps, and the student can answer the gaps with the correct answer. After they are listen from the songs that played by the teacher.
The conclusion. In conclusion, there are some tips in teaching grammar to young learners. The first is be clearer. The second is be motivating and interesting. The third is simple. And then the last one, review and revise. Finally, that we teach can centrally motivate our students to learn and also how well they retain. Of the things we teach, most would agree grammar is one of the most challenging. Our reason is because it is not easy to motivate students, especially young students, to learn grammar. In an ESL classroom, kids are in a setting which others are surrounded by language. The second language is made meaningful because the context and because of the way teachers speak to them. They have time to sort out the language that they heard and understand. When they are ready, they begin to use it to express themselves. On the other hand, adults usually focus on learning vocabulary and grammar rules and make an effort to apply those rules later. Okay, maybe that's all for our presentation. Thank you for watching, and please write your comment and your question below. We are so sorry if there a mistake on our presentation. Have a nice day.